The grid, a digital frontier. After decades of dormancy, it was given new life. But what would that life look like beyond the big screen? In the aftermath of a reboot, an unseen Uprising was brought to life in its own series. But if this story is left unfinished, will we ever get back in? The Tron franchise will always be the black sheep of Walt Disney Studios. From its groundbreaking 1982 original film to the 2010 legacy sequel that brought the grid into the modern world, the adventures of Tron, the Flynns, and the heroes and villains of cyberspace have amassed a loyal following that has always lived on the outskirts of both Disney and sci-fi fandom. But it isn't just these two films and the upcoming Tron Ares that gave the grid life. The most expansive addition to the world of Tron ever made feels completely forgotten by time. The one-season TV show that first booted up in 2012, Tron Uprising. Running for only 19 episodes and filling in the gap between the original and legacy, Uprising was never able to fully live out its vision or complete its potential because of its abrupt cancellation in 2013. It's a frustrating, overlooked part of the franchise that has so many untapped possibilities. And speaking as a longtime Tron fan, ain't that just the way? So what was this Interquel looking to achieve in its story of a betrayed but still heroic Tron living in the shadow of Clu's reign over the grid? Who was Beck, the forgotten rebel hero of Uprising? And why did Disney cancel this animated series despite their hopes for the future of Tron? This is Tron Uprising, the cartoon a franchise forgot. The entire history of Tron is a constant series of stops and starts and cycles, with breakthrough technology leading to underwhelming box office performance, which eventually gives way to a growing cult following, and then the cycle begins again. A few years ago, I made a video covering Tron and Tron Legacy, and the entire history of their productions and connected nature to one another, but for the sake of our story today, I'll recap it just a bit. Writer and director Steve Lisberger's original Tron premiered on July 9, 1982, and while its groundbreaking special effects and use of CGI created a generation of loyal fans, its difficult production and underwhelming box office left Disney cold on continuing the franchise in any major way. Cue decades of growing fans leading to a swell of interest in a Tron sequel, with Tron Legacy written by Edward Kitsis and Adam Horowitz and directed by Joseph Kosinski, premiering on December 17, 2010. Of course, this isn't the first time the world of Tron has been expanded on. The original arcade game that brought the film's cabinet to real life, Tron 2.0, the computer game that acted as a legacy sequel years before a film sequel was ever made, and the different Kingdom Hearts crossovers from across the years kept the franchise alive during decades of near dormancy, but the explosion of Tron material to coincide with Legacy's release was on a completely different level, and came just before everything changed forever at Disney. What's important to remember is that production on Tron Legacy began before Disney bought Marvel Comics or Star Wars, and with the studio struggling to launch a franchise of their own, they were all in on Tron. Alongside Legacy came the nighttime dance party event Electronica at California Adventure, a Legacy pinball machine, a manga adaptation, the eventual light cycle run theme park rides, the video game Evolution, which tells its own perspective on Clu's takeover of the grid, and most importantly to our video today, the creation of the animated TV show Tron Uprising. Announced in 2010 and premiering on May 18, 2012 on Disney XD, Tron Uprising was co-created by Kitsis and Horowitz after they created Legacy, with the duo writing the majority of the episodes here, and directed by Charlie Bean and Robert Valley. While only running for 19 episodes, Uprising works to tell an escalating story of oppression and rebellion across the grid, and the story of an unlikely hero that inspires his people to action. The show follows young program Beck, voiced by Elijah Wood, a mechanic living in Argon City, which exists on a remote part of the grid far away from Tron City, where the events of Legacy took place. And after a short recap of Clu's betrayal, attack on Tron, and Kevin Flynn going into hiding, which sparked the events of Legacy, Uprising picks up with Clu having already gained control over the grid and slowly setting his forces to assert control over the furthest outreaches of the system. But when the forces of General Tesla arrive and kill Beck's best friend Bodhi, Beck begins his own personal rebellion and is taken under the wing of Tron to begin an uprising against Clue. So obviously, with Uprising taking place sometime between the flashback events shown in Legacy and Sam Flynn's arrival on the grid 20 years later, the show is looking to tell its own story that has to inevitably tie back into the movie's events, while still having enough free reign to be unpredictable. And the first real big swing made by the show is to have Tron alive and still free from Clue's influence. One of the twists in Legacy is that while it seems like Tron was killed by Clue during the Uprising decades earlier, he was actually reprogrammed to be his enforcer, Rinzler, with Tron eventually regaining his memories and fighting Clue near the end of the film. In Uprising, it's revealed that Tron survived the attack and escaped heavily damaged, which leads him to recruit Beck to take on the identity of Tron as the new leader of the rebellion against Clue. And I think that's both important for the show to have some relevance to the larger story of the grid, and it also hamstrings it a bit. No matter what happens, Tron will eventually be captured and reprogrammed by Clue, and Beck is nowhere to be found in Legacy, so he has to be taken out somehow. Of course, shows like Clone Wars, which was said to be a big influence on Uprising, showed that new characters like Ahsoka could be introduced in the gaps of a larger series and still given surprising fates. But Clone Wars also ran for years and had a lot of freedom to expand into other properties. With Tron's fate in mind, Uprising already has a lot of limitations on it, but I think the series is still worthwhile. I think a lot of what excited us was telling this story through the point of view of a program, so we're really in the grid and exploring the grid in this one, said Kitsis. In Legacy, Flynn talks a lot about what this world could be and these programs and how special it was, and for us, it was important to show that. What was great about Beck for us, thematically, it's about a character who's learning he's more than his programming. Structurally, the show is riding a line between episodic and serialized storytelling. There are a few two-part episodes, but most of them are contained single-episode stories that slowly pushed each character forward in their unique arcs. Mara, voiced by Mandy Moore, is a co-worker of Beck's at the garage, but the actions of the Renegade and the growing oppression of Clue slowly force her into rebellion. Zed, voiced by Nate Corddry, is a longtime friend of Beck's who's mostly complacent with Clue's regime, and is honestly so frickin' annoying that the show is worse whenever he's part of the plot. Abel, Reginald VelJohnson, is the owner of the garage and Beck's boss, who is at first a roadblock to Beck's actions, but is eventually revealed to be an ally of Tron and a fellow rebel. He's probably the best supporting character in the show. General Tesla, Lance Henriksen, is Clue's second-in-command who stands in place for the true big bad as the greater evil of the show, enforcing a totalitarian lockdown on Argon City. Paige, Emmanuel Shariki, is a commander working for Tesla who voluntarily reprograms herself as a soldier to fight the supposed threat of the ISOs, but is clearly being drawn to the light side by Beck. And Paul Rubens, is the sniveling second-in-command under Tesla, constantly looking for more power and acting as the evil flip side to Paige's morally gray role. Outside of these characters, Uprising has several people that only appear for 1 or 2 episodes, such as the defecting scientist Keller, games fighter Cutler, homicidal original renegade Cyrus, former friend who betrayed Tron Dyson, and more who each make their own choices in the growing rebellion. Uprising makes a lot of bold decisions with its characters throughout the season, and I think Katsis and Horowitz were intent on telling a serious story with high stakes that let decisions made by characters linger and create ripple effects in the episodes that followed. In particular, the death of one character late into the season shows that Uprising was a show willing to take big risks and upset the status quo. In doing so, it really feels like anything could happen. But this is Beck and Tron's story, with Tron the physically weakened but mentally strong mentor, and Beck as the young hero fully coming into his own.
I want to do this. I have to do this. I'm ready.
No, you're not.
It's a bit cliche, but I like their dynamic, with Uprising showing them to become friends and equals that have to trust each other to make a difference in Argon. As Tron, Bruce Boxleitner is giving a more seasoned and wiser performance that adds some gravitas against a mostly younger cast, and Elijah, while not who you might immediately think of as a traditional heroic lead, nicely taps into the youth and growth of Beck. It really isn't all that long before Beck is a very capable hero, taking on Clue's legions on his own and being a new version of Tron that's very easy to root for. It's the oldest mythic story there is, finding out there's something special about you, that you have a destiny, resisting it at first and then learning to embrace it with all the dangers that entails, said Horowitz. These are programs, but as we saw in Tron and Tron Legacy, programs are starting to evolve, to go beyond their programming. For us, it was a good opportunity to look at these programs as real, three-dimensional characters. Story-wise, I think that Uprising does a solid job at making surprising decisions with its characters and turning most of them into complex individuals. Not all of them, but a lot of them. The big challenge that this show has is that there are no human characters at all, and every character is a program. And while Tron and Legacy do a decent job at showing some of those programs as complex individuals, a lot of them are pretty shallow programs that just follow their routines. Uprising has to really work to show that these characters are worth our emotional and mental investment, and that we do want to see them live out their lives as complex, three-dimensional beings. It's a strange need, like who wants to see people working everyday jobs for $1 on the grid? But I get that a show like this needs to fill out its world and characters more than what's necessary for a 2-hour movie. Uprising is also using the well-worn secret identity superhero trope for Beck's identity as the Renegade and new Tron. By day, he works in the garage and spends time with his friends. By night, he's Tron, fighting against Teslar's forces, and the drama of the show comes from him trying to keep his identity a secret so he can be a symbol of rebellion and avoid being targeted by the enemy. The problem is that I just don't care about the normal everyday stuff that takes up time in the show between the adventures. This is a world that has wild gladiator battles, light cycle chases, bumpin' nightclubs, and massive wars over the future of the entire world happening all the time. I don't care about whether or not Beck is going to lose his job at the garage. Thankfully, I think Kitsis, Horowitz, and the writing team realize this, as Uprising moves further and further away from the everyday life stories and pushes more into the rebellion and dangerous missions as the season goes on. But ultimately, I think that the show is treading water a little too much. Mara, Zed, Paige, and any other recurring character that may take up Tron's causes are always taking 2 steps forward, 1 step back throughout the show because Uprising doesn't want to completely get to the, well, Uprising just yet. By the end of Season 1, Tron and Beck have finally fully inspired a lot of the programs of Argon, including Mara and Zed, to fully rebel, right as Clue himself arrives in the city. But we'll get to the ultimate fate of the show in a few minutes. All to say, it's frustrating to watch in retrospect. Obviously, the Uprising team were writing in the context of creating a multi-season story, but you can't help but want Beck to stop wasting time and aggressively go after Tesla and his forces, with the clock winding down on this story. Given that there are no human users transported to the grid here, which is kind of the point of Tron, Uprising is not about the relationships between people and technology. There are no discussions about whether humans can be enhanced, helped, or hindered by rapidly advancing software. Instead, this is a story about people being forced into complacency by an aggressive totalitarian regime, just as they're understanding their own potential to grow and be whoever they want to be. And when the yearning for freedom meets oppressors who fear that freedom, rebellion becomes inevitable. That's the clear through line of the show, and it makes Uprising into less of an adventure than the 2 feature films and more of a drama. Of course, there is plenty of action in each episode as well, and it punctuates the dramatic stories. If you're looking for light cycle races or disc battles, you can find plenty of that here. As for the actual quality of the show, Uprising had a lot of talented people on board and a sizable budget, and it shows throughout the production. Uprising has this really distinct visual identity to it that feels like something halfway between the original and Legacy. Specifically, the entire show is CGI with a cel-shaded approach, where each character has a very distinct, flat, caricatured model. And the gray skin tones are callbacks to the original Tron. I wasn't so sure that would work at first when watching the show. Honestly, I think the look is off-putting on first glance, and probably didn't help bring in more viewers. But I got used to it pretty quickly, and I think the Legacy-style neon environments, which reflect off the characters, add a more dynamic look than what was created in the first film. For example, Tron is designed to look like Bruce Boxleitner, who played him in the original and Legacy, but he's very elongated and squinty, preventing an accidental, uncanny valley in the model. Every recurring character has a distinct, easily recognizable look and outline, which comes in handy when silhouetted against dark, neon backgrounds. Really, the most traditional looking is Beck, who has a more youthful, heroic appearance to coincide with his journey, although it's given a more unsure, awkward tone with Elijah Wood's voice acting. The environment of the grid here is the most expansive and complex version in any interpretation of Tron ever made. The limited technology and budget of Steve Lisberger's original meant that the grid was mostly the game's arena and the surrounding outlands, with Legacy replicating that in a version of the grid that was one big neon city surrounded by stormy wastelands and the sea of simulation. In Uprising, the grid is more like an entire state instead of a city, and with Beck fighting Clue's forces across Argonne and in the many surrounding areas, all connected by light rail, the show takes us to not just the heights and slums of the city, but docks, oceans, outlands, and many more locations that make the grid a lot more like a computerized reflection of the real world instead of its own small ecosystem. Honestly, I'm not sure how I feel about that. A full season of a show, and especially one that was hoping to run for many more seasons, needs an expansive world that can give a lot of variety to its stories and avoid feeling too repetitive. But I really love how the grid of Legacy is a tightly contained world that's either 24/7 ruthless nightclub or endless badlands. In any case, I think the show takes full advantage of its world and really leans into its stylish, moody atmosphere more and more as the season goes on. That's helped a lot by the show's incredible score, composed by Joseph Trapanese. Unsurprisingly, Uprising echoes a lot of Legacy's synth orchestral score, which was made by Daft Punk, but what people often overlook is that that score was arranged and orchestrated by Trapanese, and I think his work on the Uprising soundtrack is proof that he deserves a ton of credit for Legacy's sound. It's a lot to live up to. Legacy has one of the best film scores ever made, and as we all know, Tron Legacy is the 9th greatest movie of all time, ranking just behind Evil Dead 2, Predator, Kiki's Delivery Service, Chungking Express, Before Sunset, Shin Gojira, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and Rear Window, and just above Jaws, The Thing, It's a Wonderful Life, and Aliens. And really, Trapanese is underrated when it comes to current film composers. His work with Anthony Gonzalez on the Oblivion soundtrack is wildly overlooked and is an incredible piece. Here, the Legacy themes and sound expand, and really make this feel like a living, breathing, really moody world. Honestly, some of my favorite parts of the show are when Beck or other characters slow down and reflect, letting the grid envelop the story. Uprising is a show that honestly becomes stronger and stronger as it goes along, and I feel like a second season would have really elevated the entire series, but it was never meant to be. Here's the thing, Tron Uprising was kinda doomed from the start. Despite making $400 million worldwide and being the 14th highest grossing movie globally in 2010, Tron Legacy was seen as a disappointment by Disney, which by this point had bought Marvel and was riding high on the billion-dollar takes of Toy Story 3 and Alice in Wonderland. Tron was very quickly deprioritized, but Uprising was already deep into production. Disney did have some faith in the show. When it was first announced, Uprising's first season was only 10 episodes, but the studio expanded it to 19 during production. It's just that the company very quickly lost faith in it post-debut. Uprising's presence on Disney XD was also kind of a nightmare. Now, there's been plenty of great shows on the channel over the years, but Tron, while appropriate for a wide age range, was a much more mature, darker, more intense story with visuals that presented as ready for adults. Shows that were airing at the same time on XD included Phineas and Ferb, Kickin' It, Lab Rats, Gravity Falls, Crash and Bernstein, and Randy Cunningham, 9th Grade Ninja. These are kid-friendly, very bright, more sitcom-style shows that made Uprising into the odd duck of the channel. And while the show started out with a strong viewership of 1.79 million viewers for its premiere episode, it quickly dropped and dropped throughout the rest of the year. What didn't help was that while the show was originally airing each new weekly episode on Sundays at 7 p.m. EST, Disney unexpectedly and with no advertising moved the premiere of each new episode to Sunday at midnight EST, putting it in a total dead zone that led to fans accusing the studio of purposefully trying to kill the show. There's really no evidence one way or another, but like I said before, Disney was very much done with Tron at this point and wanted to cut their losses. On January 12, 2013, with 16 episodes aired and 3 still to come, Edward Kitsis was asked about whether the show would continue as the rumors of its cancellation began to float around online, saying, "I don't know what the future of Tron Uprising is now. I know at the present, I can say we need more viewers. I'm so proud of that show, and I love that show, and anyone who watches it loves that show. The problem is, not enough people are watching it. And so I would love to sound the alarm, because I love the characters and the world, and it's really a shame that more people aren't watching it, because I think they're missing out." And miss out they did, because after Uprising's season finale aired on January 28, 2013, Disney quietly let the show end. However, the soft cancellation came so late that the Uprising team had already written scripts for 6 episodes of Season 2 and an entire script for an Uprising TV movie that would have bridged the gap between the first and second seasons. In the years since, writer Bill Wolkoff has released a few pages from the unproduced screenplay, and while the plot has never been fully revealed, pages for the movie show Cora playing a major role, returning to team with Beck in the fight against Clue's invading army, with Clue specifically looking to capture and use Tron, who is revealed to be from the original grid and can be used to create new programs for Clue. After its cancellation, Disney let Uprising stream on Netflix for a year and then eventually moved it to Disney Plus in 2019. The exposure has definitely helped grow Uprising's fanbase, but absolutely nothing was going to bring this show back, as plans for Kaczynski's Tron 3 stalled and then were fully cancelled, ending the legacy era for the franchise and all productions associated with it. Tron Uprising may have ended with the rebellion fully underway and the massive battle with Clue about to begin, but Beck's story will never be finished. So, what does the future hold for the world of Tron? In the 15 years since Legacy premiered, very little has happened outside of the video game's runner, identity, and catalyst, but at the time of this video's publication, Tron Ares is just a few weeks away from being released, and I think the success or failure of that film completely holds the future of the franchise in its hands. It's clear that Disney is putting far fewer of its chips on Tron this time when compared to Legacy's release. No tie-in video games or TV shows, very little merchandise or events that have been announced so far. That says nothing about the actual quality of the film. I couldn't speak to it one way or another yet, except to say that Jared Leto's involvement is a bit of a buzzkill, and I think more and more people are way out on this overexposed, extremely annoying actor who's just waiting on multiple scandals to fully make the news. But who knows, maybe it'll be great and people will really show up for it. Will Ares explicitly continue Legacy's story? I'm sure there will be a few connecting threads, but I'd honestly be pleasantly surprised if anyone other than Kevin Flynn shows up. And at this point, I'm thinking it's less and less likely that even Tron, who the entire dang movie is named after, will show up at all. And Beck will absolutely not be mentioned. But despite never getting the chance to fully live up to its potential, Tron Uprising is a must-watch for any fan of this world. For now, we can only hope for many more returns to the grid. Thanks for watching today's video, and with Tron Ares just a few weeks away, I thought it was finally time to make another Tron video. One of the very first videos that I ever made for my channel was about Tron Legacy, and a few years ago I made a video covering both Tron and Tron Legacy and their connections, which I actually made right before Ares was officially announced. I remember a lot of comments on that video asking for me to cover Uprising someday, and now it's time. Uprising is a really interesting and kind of frustrating entry into the Tron series overall, because while I do enjoy it, I think that there's still a lot of untapped potential in this TV show overall, and I really think that if it had been given that TV movie and another season, it would have fully lived into those possibilities. But that will obviously never happen now. The full scripts for the TV movie and any of the scripts that they made for Season 2 are still under tight lock and key, because they were made for Disney, who guards their secrets very well, but I would absolutely love to read those things for myself someday, as well as any of the scripts that were written for the original cancelled Tron 3 under Kaczynski, because those were written, they just never did anything with them. Put those together, and being a Tron fan is kinda painful. Still, I really did enjoy Uprising for what it was, and I'm glad that I was able to return to the show and watch everything that I'd missed once upon a time. It's really enjoyable, and if you're a fan of Tron, you really should check this out, because it's the biggest Tron story we've ever gotten. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Tron Uprising, your hopes and fears for Ares, and what you would like to see for this series in the future. Maybe someday I will do videos on Tron Evolution and the other Tron video games as well. Let me know if you're interested. As always, a huge thank you to my members and patrons for their continued support, and if you'd like to be a member or patron, it's only $2 a month for early access to every video and exclusive reviews, with September's exclusive review covering Cloverfield. Also, we're getting very close to the Halloween season, and by the time you're watching this video, I'll probably have several Halloween videos already made and waiting to be released. So get excited, because I am. So until next time, I hope that you're taking care of yourselves and spending some time on the grid.